You know, people say get as much education as you can, but what I mean by education is study music, study our culture, get interested in American culture and draw from all of it, all of music. Go as far back as you can and then bring it up to the present.
Danny, so great to have you here. You have been a steady fix in a forward motion of the music industry. And as a guitarist, a session player, as a producer, as a songwriter, you really have hit several areas of the music industry, and you have become this force. You really have a style and a sound that is really individually owned by you. That's pretty amazing.
Well, that's the idea.
Yeah, it really is. Thanks so much for joining us.
Sure,
So,
pleasure.
what are you doing now?
Well, the thing I'm doing now that's the most enjoyable to me is I'm in a band, a very good band. And I haven't done this in a long time, to play live in my own band. And this is it's called The Immediate Family. And it's Russ Kunkel, Lee Sklar, Waddy Wachtel, Steve Postel, and myself. So 3 guitars. All of us have known each other. Well, I've known Russ and Lee and Waddy for basically a lifetime.
Oh, the best players, man,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right, we all came up together and we all love each other. So that's the main thing that I'm doing that brings me the most joy at this point.
Yeah.
I'm also, of course, still writing songs, plus doing stuff like this.
Yeah, well, good for you, good for you. So how did music enter your life? Where did it start for you in the early days of you realizing that you had this passion to want to do this?
Well, I was lucky enough to grow up at a period where all hell was breaking loose in music
Yeah.
in the 60s. There's so much great music. Jazz was great. Blues was great.
Yeah.
Rock and roll, well, I would say soul music was great.
Yeah.
That's the same Motown and Stax Volt.
Yeah.
That stuff. I was really enamored of soul music. So I grew up right in the middle of all this stuff. And it was a constant part of my life. And I started playing guitar when I was about 10 years old.
Why guitar?
Why guitar? Well, my mother started me on piano lessons and I hated them. So she thought I looked cute with a guitar, so she got me a guitar. I banged away on it, tried to play scales. I really wasn't that interested in it until I found those 3 chords with which you can play everything. the 1, 4, and 5 chord. And once I found those, it was like the heavens parted. And I said, this is it. I love it. That's it. And I never looked back.
You know, you say the 1, 4, and 5 chord. That's such an important part of the core of what music was written at that time.
Yes.
And still to this day.
That's right.
That how it connects with people and all the songs that have been written.
Right.
And once you connected with that, you started to relate to probably all the music that was out there at that time.
Well, certainly all the rock and roll and blues,
Yeah.
definitely. And that's what I loved the most.
So who'd you listen to in those early days?
Well, Lightning Hopkins, Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, that kind of stuff, plus all Motown, Stax Volt. Steve Cropper was a big hero of mine. I love the way he sounded on those Otis Redding, Sam and Dave records.
Yeah.
I love the idea of being in an ensemble where you go to the studio and you cut hits all day long
Yeah.
with great singers, and you go home and do the same thing the next day. I thought that was just the coolest. So I was always interested in being in the ensemble, being
Yeah.
part of a band, being part of something like that. Yeah.
Boy, how fantastic. So did you start studying the instrument? Did you take lessons at all?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I started taking lessons, but this is like early 60s, and it wasn't like you had Steve Vai to learn from, or, there was no literature or help in terms of playing rock and roll. If you wanted to study a guitar, it was either classical guitar or jazz guitar, neither of which I was interested in the long term.
Yeah.
Although I did study jazz guitar and, learn some of the standards and how to blow over changes and whatnot to some degree. But that was never my main focus. I wanted to play music of my generation. Also, playing those standards back in the 60s, those were all standards and they were all in the flat keys. They were for piano and horns.
Yeah, yeah.
And guitar music was all in, E, A, G, D. And of course, the jazz musicians sneered at that. Those were cowboy chords, right?
Absolutely.
But but that's what I wanted to do because I was digging Lightning Hopkins, like I said, and a bunch of hillbilly guys, and I like guitar music.
Yeah. But the artists that you mentioned, and part of the audience that listens to this, the names that you mentioned, I want them to go and do the research of who these people were and their music, so they can see. To be influenced by your playing, they have to kind of go back and listen to who you were influenced by.
Right.
That's a very important part of the process.
Right. Well, that's something that I would say to any kid growing up listening to music. Is whoever your heroes are, find out who they learn from, and then find out who they learn from, and find out who they learn from, and take it as far back as you can.
Yeah.
It's a big rave of mine that if you're interested in American music and American culture, know your stuff.
Yeah.
Be curious. Led Zeppelin did not invent rock and roll.
Yeah.
Find out who they loved, and then find out who loved them.
Yeah.
Take it all the way back.
Yeah.
Get interested in it.
Yeah.
This is a deep, profound culture, in my opinion. music is the shot heard around the world and the greatest thing that we've ever produced in the United States of America, because it's benign and it's loved all over the world, unlike our politics and a bunch of other stuff. I would say get proud of it and be part of it and get serious about it.
Boy, fantastic, fantastic. So what, at this point now, you started making money playing music with bands. How did your career begin to develop in the professional field?
Well, after I got out of high school, I immediately started a band, the King Bees.
The King Bees.
Yeah, this is 1965,
Great.
the King Bees. And we played every dump in New York. At the time, there were a lot of clubs called discotheques, but they weren't discos, they were discotheques. Most of the gigs we had, we'd play for a half an hour, then a DJ would play for a half an hour, then we'd play and back and forth all night. We did that everywhere, all over Manhattan, when there were still a lot of clubs in Manhattan. Yeah. And then up and down the East Coast, we played biker bars, gay bars, alcoholic bars, teen nightclubs, everything you could possibly imagine. And so that's how I learned to play it, and that's a good way to learn. We did covers, we did R&B covers, we did James Brown and Otis Redding, and plus we were running our own tunes a little bit. And that's a great way to learn, as you know.
Boy, what a wonderful, way to really kind of hone the craft.
Sure. And
really kind of get out there and be in front of the people and learn the skills that are needed.
Well, there's nothing in the whole world like playing in front of an audience, and there's nothing like playing. You can go home and practice all you want in your bedroom, but you're going to learn more doing gigs by far. Even if the guys you're playing with aren't great, you will still learn more by playing gigs and going out and be part of the landscape, the musical landscape, as it were.
So you were meeting other musicians, and you kept on performing, and you kept on playing. How did you evolve in the course of time from New York? And then you moved from the East Coast, West Coast. When did that happen?
Well, I was walking up, I think, 57th Street. It was freezing cold. I had a Fender Deluxe amp in one hand and a guitar in the other hand, and I'm saying, I'm getting tired of this, And I met a band called Clear Light. And Clear Light was a kind of psychedelic LA band who were supposed to be the next Doors, although they were never going to be. They were nowhere near as good as the Doors. But their guitar player had quit or gotten fired, so I joined them. I remember we got $70 a month for rent and $30 a week to live on, and that was it. And I said, sure, I'm gone, and moved to Los Angeles. And as soon as I got there, the first place I lived was Laurel Canyon, and sure enough, I got to meet all those legendary Laurel Canyon people that we all read about, that we all have read about.
So at that point, you make the move there, you start to meet a whole different level. Did you know anybody out here at that time?
Not really, but a lot of the people I did know had moved out here. Now, before I moved out to Los Angeles, I was in a band called The Flying Machine with my childhood buddy, James Taylor. We had also met Peter Asher, and Peter moved out to LA right after me. And Carole, I'd known Carole in New York. I was doing, one of the first stuff I ever did in the studio was playing on Carole and Goffin and King demos. And Carole's a genius level
Carole King you're talking about.
Carole King, she's a genius level writer and producer and arranger. And I learned so much playing on those demos, like you can't believe. And that's basically how I learned to play on records, was from her.
Interesting.
And it was like going to Harvard, believe me. And there's no better teacher in the world than Carole.
Oh, even the Broadway show, Broadway show, beautiful that's happening. It's just, really makes it aware of how incredibly talented and the force that she is in the music industry is pretty powerful.
Well, that show just scratched the surface, because she would go into the studio when she was like 17 or 18, the only girl there, the only woman there, and tell everyone what to play, conduct them, write the song, having written the song. She basically was running the whole show at age 17. Pretty remarkable. She's an extraordinary individual, without a doubt.
So your school of hard knocks, man, this really was hitting the road and playing with these musicians, and you were actively performing a lot.
Yeah. Well, I was always in a band.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had the King Bees first, and then the Flying Machine. The Flying Machine played in Greenwich Village. We played at all the coffee houses down there.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to LA, I played with this band Clear Light for a while. They broke up after 6 months. And then Carole decided she wanted to make a record, but not in her own name. So she made a record called The City. And it was myself, Charlie Larkey, bass player, and her. And Lou Adler was the guy that put it together and produced it. And that was the first time I'd ever been in the studio to make a full album, and I was shaking in my shoes, working with the great Lou Adler. On drums was Jim Gordon. I mean, what an experience, I'll never forget it.
Jim, great.
So that's a hell of a way to make your first album. That was it.
Talk about that for a second. You're making an album, you're put in that situation, because a lot of these young kids go in there, and a lot of times they record, separately.
Of course.
Recording their parts and not really being in a room.
Right.
Talk about being in a room with these musicians where you're working.
All right. Well, that was a whole other way. I guess it's kind of. I hope it comes back, but at the moment, it's not the way most records are made. And you can hear that it's all pasted together. Not to disparage Pro Tools because it is a tool.
Yeah.
You can use it any way you want to use it.
It's not the only tool.
Right.
Yeah.
But the idea of people talk about analog sound, the thing that really makes analog sound happen is not just the fact that you're recording to tape, it's that everyone's in the room together.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's leakage, but there's also interplay that happens. There's spontaneity and interplay that happens when you're working with terrific musicians.
Yeah.
Everyone's listening, and so your part is defined by what else is going on in the room.
Yeah.
This makes you think faster and also makes you more aware of what everyone else is doing. So it isn't just playing your part after everyone else has played theirs. It's coming up with something right then.
Yeah.
And everyone has to feel that way. All the musicians have to feel that way.
So the experience of being in the studio, it's almost up to a point where your awareness level is at such a high level of attentiveness that it's got to be as sharp as possible. So that's a skill that happens in time. How did you feel when you were recording in this first session? This must have been, an incredible experience.
Well, on the one hand, I was shaking in my shoes, as I said. On the other hand, I loved every minute of it because the process was so beautiful to me, and being able to come up with stuff and then getting praised for having come up with a good part was just incredible, and still is.
Where'd you go from there now? So now you're out in LA, you're meeting these people, you're connecting.
Well, right after that, Carole had made, like I said, this album called The City, which was a group. Here comes James, and Peter got James a deal on Warner Brothers. Obviously, James had been on Apple before and made one album there, but then Peter flew out to California. Peter Asher did. By the way, he stayed on my couch for a week while he was making this deal for James. Yeah. So I think he can afford his own place now.
But I think that's important to understand because the relationship that you have developed, you guys became like close friends, and you were like brothers.
Yes.
And you're in the grit of the front line of the battle, man, working together. This is really how music has evolved. It's what you've done. It's amazing.
Yes. Well, I was lucky. I was right at ground zero. All hell was breaking loose. I mean, LA was a jumping scene at that point.
Yeah.
And everyone knew everyone else. It was a real community,
Yeah.
which has been described in a lot of books and stuff. But everyone knew everyone else, and everyone was helping everyone. Everyone was writing together. If you needed a guitar, a guitar amp, one of your buddies would lay one on you. Here, use this one. It was a very open, wonderful situation, a very communal situation.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful time, and I was amazingly lucky to have just walked into this incredible scene.
Well, it was fortunate to have you because of your talent and your skill base. You really rose to the level. You made it happen.
Well, I was fortunate. I was good enough to participate and be part of it and be taken seriously. So that was a great thing.
On the business side, in trying to organize all this, how did you organize all this here? Because you're doing sessions, you're traveling, you're playing, you're doing. Was there are you an organized person? Did you?
No.
No. How'd you make it all happen?
I didn't make it happen. It happened,
Yeah.
and I was there. You get called for a session, you'd go. You get called for a tour, you'd go. Now, one thing I want to say is that when I was working for Peter Asher in the early days, he would get us all together. We would rehearse, sometimes at his place.
Yeah.
We would then make the album. Then we'd all tour, the same band. We'd go out and tour with James.
Wow.
And then we'd do the same thing again. We'd come back, they'd write, James would write another album, and we'd go in the studio. So it was a continuous process of working with these great musicians, and that's what I loved about it. Be honest with you, I was never that interested in just being a session musician. I wanted to do projects, events, something that meant something, rather than just play for anybody anytime.
Boy, fantastic. James Taylor seems to be a really incredibly dedicated musician.
Mm-hmm. He's absolutely brilliant, and he evolved and grew and continued to grow artistically. He's one of the best singers you will ever hear, and his guitar playing is absolutely unique and brilliant. He's a genius on acoustic guitar, absolutely one of the best.
Boy, you had a chance to work with so many brilliant artists. Are there any
Yeah.
memories that you have that stand out more than others as far as just maybe how you grew as an individual by working with these people?
Well, I mean, there's too many to mention. Yes. I mean, I worked with a lot of incredibly brilliant people, and I learned from all of them. I don't even know where to start in terms of how to tell you.
Yeah.
As I said, Carole was brilliant in terms of teaching me. Peter Asher was a great producer, and he would aim us in the right direction. But he expected all of us musicians to think like producers. In other words, to come up with stuff that was going to help. And this is the essence of playing on records, and especially what we were doing, is make the singers comfortable and make them sound great. Play for the song and the singer. Make the drummer happy, and of course make the producer happy, And play for the record. Don't play for yourself, play for the record. What is going to help the situation? Always thinking about what can I play that's going to help. That's going to help get this song across, going to help make this record good.
Boy, that's a great philosophy, because many of the young musicians that I witness sometimes are so concerned about thinking about how they can have their sound understood, as opposed to what's happening for the betterment of the entire project.
Yeah, well, what I would say about that, especially the young guitar players, is wheedly ain't going to get you nowhere.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
learn how to play songs.
Yeah.
That's how you get paid. You don't get paid to sit in your living room, playing as fast as humanly possible,
Yeah.
shredding or whatever you want to call it, sweep picking.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
There's like 3 guys that do that to make a living, and you're not one of them. But I would say, learn how to play songs. Learn how to play, how to play a part that's going to help the singer. It's going to help the song. Pay attention to how you can help.
Yeah.
It ain't about you, it's about the thing. It's about the song, the project you're working on, and how to make it great.
Boy, to serve the music, that's absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. Are there any bands or guitar players or any musicians that you listen to now?
Well, I'm always hearing stuff I like, Obviously, my buddies are among my favorite musicians, Luke, Steve Luther is one of my favorite humans.
Yeah, great.
Waddy, cats like that. As for young bands, I love the Black Keys, the Rival Sons are really good. I like Greta Van Fleet, because I like to hear them pounding away.
Yeah.
There's plenty of groups, I love War on Drugs, I think they're really good. Oh, Kaleo are great, the band Kaleo. I like to hear bands where the singer sounds like he really means it,
Yeah, boy, that's fantastic, fantastic. What motivates you?
Well, my love for music and my love for people and my love for the community. I think that's what motivates me more than anything. I just love the whole process. And I think any great musician will tell you the same thing, Obviously, it's great to get paid, but you're not going to get paid unless you love it, unless you mean it.
The music industry, as we know, has changed tremendously.
Yes.
The way it is now to where it was then. What do you see in the change today? How do you see? Is social media an important thing to be aware of? What can someone prepare today?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
To be honest with you,
yeah.
I have no idea, how you get across. They say that social is very, very important and all this stuff. I can't imagine why taking any of this stuff seriously, to me, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You got to make something happen musically.
Yeah.
Then you got to make friends by playing in front of them,
Yeah.
not by just posting your stuff. You've got to go out and play. And get people to love you and care about you. And if they don't, change what you're doing until they do. Find a way to get over. And I think that's what's most important. As for the industry, tell you the truth, I don't give a crap about the industry. It never did.
Yeah.
I don't consider it. It is a business, but I don't think of it as a business.
Nice.
To me, playing music is a way of life. It's a religion, a way of life, a way of being, more than anything else. And you got to love it. And what I would say to everybody, young people, whoever, if you can live without it, do something else.
Yeah.
The only reason to be in music is if you can't live without it. And that means there's only a plan A. There's no plan B, plan C, no. You got to mean it completely, and it has to be something that you must do, that you feel in your heart and your soul that you must do.
Fantastic, fantastic. In closing, now think about it. We have this next generation that's watching this, and these are fans of yours that still continue to follow you and listen to you, because you have always set a standard of high musical, performance all the time.
Well, that's very nice of you to say.
Really, whether it's in recordings that I've heard you do, whether it's live, and the years with Leland Sklar, all these guys have always had this incredible respect for you in the fact that they know that when you're on that gig or you're in that session, you are going to produce at a high level. That's a really high standard that you have set, which is beautiful. What would you say to this next generation to give them maybe the hope and understanding of what they should really prepare to have a career in music?
Well, it depends on what kind of career you want to have. If you learn to be an amazing sight reader, I'm just talking about guitar now.
Yeah.
If you learn to be an incredible sight reader, that means you can play in pit orchestras, it means you can do jingles, it means you can do a wide variety of stuff. I used to be able to sight read pretty well, but I lost the ability to because I was called upon to create my own parts.
Interesting.
So we were given rhythm charts,
Yeah.
and you were supposed to come up with groovy parts.
Yeah.
That was the nature of the job.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say, people say get as much education as you can, but what I mean by education is study music, study our culture. Don't just go by what happened this week or this month or this year. Find out all about Get interested in American culture and draw from all of it, all of music.
Yeah.
Go as far back as you can and then bring it up to the present. Yeah. As far as how to survive in the music business, gee, I don't know. It's a tough game right now. Very hard to get paid, as we know.
Yeah.
When I was a producer, I used to get paid. Now, record producer, you don't get paid anything,
Yeah.
There's no, records aren't sold, and to get paid based on streaming is very difficult.
Yeah.
Unless you're selling huge numbers of streams. So I would say the best way, is to get really good, get with a bunch of friends, make a band, and go out and make friends and get people going.
Yeah.
That's one way. Or get your reading chops really together and go out as a sideman. There's tons of bands going out and acts going out now that require musicians, even though they've made the whole thing on a laptop.
Yeah.
When I see hip hop or rap acts on TV, they always have a band. They always have some guys, a drummer, and they're always very good. So these guys did their homework and they studied and they can do anything. And I would say, be one of those guys. You should be able to do anything. But the best way is to feel it, to mean it, to care. And that would be my advice.
Fantastic. Well, you know, the name Kootch was given to you when you were younger.
Yes.
That's how people know you as it. And you have set a standard that is just so great, Danny, that is just still moving the industry forward. And for that, here at the Sessions, we thank you so much.
Thank you. That's really sweet. Thanks for everything. Great.